From Rockefeller Center, here's your host, Al Sharpton.
Good morning and welcome to our 7th annual Revy Awards. It's where we celebrate the best and worst in 2017 and give awards to those who deserve it. Let's bring in our distinguished panel of judges. Joining us this morning, Robert Traynham, an MSNBC analyst who's a former Bush Cheney senior advisor and currently the VP of Communications at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Joan Walsh, an MSNBC political analyst and national affairs correspondent at The Nation. Dean Obeidallah, a political comedian and columnist for the Daily Beast, as well as host of SiriusXM's The Dean Obeidallah Show, and Jason Johnson, the political director of TheRoot.com and an MSNBC contributor. Let's get right to our first Revy. The worst political move of 2017. Now, it's a crowded field that includes, among others, withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement, ending DACA, the program that allows immigrants who entered the United States illegally as minors to stay in the United States. The president's order to create a travel ban. Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, or Scott Pruitt, for that matter, as the head of EPA. I mean, what was the worst political move, Jason, 2017?
I would actually have to say it was the travel ban. Not only was that bad domestic policy, not only did it break up families, not only was it expensive, not only did it basically turn into a recruiting mechanism for people abroad who want to attack the United States, it also empowered all of Donald Trump's enemies. If we remember, when the first travel ban came through, the ACLU got a year's worth of donations within a weekend. Within a weekend. So he began his presidency by not only offending the world and a racist, dangerous policy, but also demonstrating that he can empower his enemies to take him down in the future.
And Robert, as one who is the Republican on the panel and that survived 2017,
barely.
Congratulations.
There was, if I could be benevolent as we end the year, there was some outreach under some former Republicans to try and bring people together. I remember John McCain stopped a woman from attacking Muslims in exchange when he was running against President Obama. I think, following up Jason's point, Trump killed all of that in terms of the perception that Republicans at least wanted to reach out and be tolerant.
I totally agree with you. You know, it's interesting because what the president did in 2017 was kind of double down on some of the most hate-filled language that we thought that we kind of moved from, if you will, doubling down on Alabama, doubling down on more, doubling down. Let's not forget Virginia and Charlottesville. But to your original question, Rev, I think this is important. The worst political move, I would say DACA. Here's why. It's because what the president did is that, and remember this, go back to September of 2017, Speaker Ryan and Mitch McConnell both were frustrated with the president because he undercut them. And what he did is that he leveraged Democrats' hand by saying, look, we're going to have DACA at the end of the year, so therefore we're going to force your hand on a government shutdown. And Republicans that I talked to on Capitol Hill were extremely upset because politically it put them in a box. Why, Mr. President, would you do this now when you can wait until March 5th to do this? Why are you doing this now? What Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan and their staffs had told me, specifically their staffs, not the members, is that what you did is you gave Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer an upper hand, and politically that was a bad move.
Joan, worst political move?
I would have to go with pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords just because it's going to have such incredible reverberation, and it's telling a younger generation of people who really do care about the environment that Republicans don't care.
And this impacts us image-wise all over the world,
globally,
as well as tangibly all over the world.
Right. I mean, and we are lucky that we have a lot of even Republican governors, mayors keeping up the good work, still clinging to the Paris Accords. But politically, it just showed the administration to be more concerned about undoing the deeds of Barack Obama than doing anything positive or proactive.
Dean?
To me, it's one thing off the list is the worst political move is accepting the endorsement of Steve Bannon or Donald Trump, because that's the kiss of death now after Doug Jones, Ralph Northam. Democrats took over the most seats they've had in Virginia in over 100 years, the amount of seats that swung. But I'd have to go, myself being Muslim, the travel ban.
Right.
And that personally impacted my community. It sent a message that Donald Trump sent the entire campaign that Muslims should not be trusted, that we are inherently dangerous, so we cannot determine who's the good or the bad Muslim, so we must ban all of them. And that sends a horrible message, and it leads to more bullying of Muslims in this country, so it's a horrible message.
All right, now let's go to the Revy for the best political move of 2017. Here are some ideas. Former FBI Director Robert Mueller for accepting the role to investigate the Russian collusion in last year's election. Or maybe Republican Senators Susan Collins, John McCain, Rand Paul, and Lisa Murkowski for voting against the repeal of Obamacare. Maybe Democrats rallying around Doug Jones and helping him win a historic Senate race in Alabama. Which is it, Joan? Who do you say, or what do you say, was the best political move of 2017?
I think it's all the moves that Democrats and the NAACP and other voting groups made in Alabama. They won a race that they were not expected to win, and a lot of people gave, in some ways, too much credit to the fact that it was Roy Moore, and he really he's still around, kind of a despicable human being. But there was also a lot of learnings taken from that race in Atlanta, where Democrats lost but came closer than they were expected. From Virginia, there was a lot of emphasis placed on ground game, on organizing, on church-to-church organizing, on getting felons who got their voting rights back. Not only telling them you've got your voting rights back, but you also, this is what you need to vote, and getting people who have served their time back to the polls.
Because Jason, you and I were talking. Right. A lot of the traditional organizations, NAACP, our group, National Action Network, black churches, black radio, were on the ground. Where we saw a lot of the progressive groups, that people were saying, all these groups are no longer needed 2 years ago. We didn't see what I call pop-up groups at all this year. We saw the traditional groups being able to deliver. I think I'm glad to hear Joan say that. Yeah. And I didn't tell her to say that. But we are old friends. And we think alike. No, go ahead.
I mean, pop-ups work for restaurants and American Girl stores at Christmas time, but they don't really work for organizations. Look, you've got to have a history. There's got to be people in that town, in that community that you can call upon, because you never know when there's going to be a political crisis. So it matters. I don't care how dusty the phone books are, if you still have them. It matters if there's an NAACP office. It matters if there's a National Action Network office. It matters if you've got just any kind of the National Urban League, a church that people actually attend. These are still places that people can go to get organized and get information consistently, and get information regardless of if they're tech savvy or not. And that made a difference in Virginia for Justin Fairfax. That made a difference for Keisha Lance Bottoms in Atlanta. That's making a difference all over the country.
Now, best political move.
Believe it or not, it was not one of the ones you mentioned. I think it was James Comey keeping notes. Okay, that was one of the smartest political moves of the year, and him expressing those notes when he went and testified in front of Congress. Because, look, all of the things that people wanted to speculate about how Donald Trump operated were actually laid bare by a guy who had not necessarily any sort of indicator that he was a friend of Democrats, right? I mean, James Comey pretty much cost Hillary Clinton the election. But when he came forward and said, look, this man tried to intimidate me. I have taken notes for all these meetings. It opened the door for Democrats to come out and say, look, we know this is the case. It also opened the door, I think, for skeptical Republicans who will never say this on the record to allow Mueller to come into play, because they're like, we know this guy is bad and we need a way to stop him.
Dean?
To me, it's progressive pragmatism that we saw in Virginia and Alabama. The Hillary-Bernie divide still alive and well. I hear it on my radio show almost nightly, frankly. They put that aside. Both sides, Hillary-Bernie did not matter. They went out to the end goal to win. Right. Defeat a Republican, to elect a Democrat. They were center-left. They were not as left as they want. There was no purity test involved in either Virginia or Alabama, and that's why we won. And I hope that's the message and the model we will follow going forward in 2018.
Robert, it's a lonely place to ask a Republican at the end of 2017 what was the best political move, but I will give you the chance to try and act like you could come up with one.
The best political move, absolutely brilliant, was when the Democrats seized the moral high ground here and pivoted to the Me Too movement and said, you know what, Al Sharpton, we will not have someone in our party by the name of Al Franken or John Conyers. And so what they did very skillfully is that they pitted Republicans against Republicans. They seized the narrative and said, you know what, they didn't say this, but they implied that we are the party of the moral high ground here. And you know what, this is not right. And I think that's going to make a significant plus, if you will, for Democrats come 2018 and 2020.
All right, stay with us.